Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome again, everyone, to Beyond Compliance. My name is Aaron Bolshaw with Safety Chain Software. I'm the moderator of Beyond Compliance, and we're happy to have you here today. For those that may not know, Beyond Compliance is a periodic industry update for process manufacturers. The goal, very simply, is to bring you insights around our markets that shape the way we grow our businesses, deliver quality products and safe products to customers, mitigate supply chain risks, and safeguard all of our brands. And of course, this is all needs to be done while improving yields, maximizing productivity, and making sure that we're getting our shipments out to customers. So today we are actually getting into a topic that will help those last points a little bit more, increasing yields and maximizing productivity. We're diving, into the process side of the pool today, and looking at 3 methods to unlock continuous improvement across the plant. And we're going to get to why the continuous part of that is so important. First, just a quick word about Safety Chain. We're the #1 plant management platform uniting compliance, safety, quality, and production across 6 distinct products that help you really take the hassle and complexity out of all the processing excuse me, in your plant. And for today, we are scheduled for about an hour. We will stay flexible with our time. We think that many of you will have some detailed questions. And so to start, we want to make sure everyone knows you can hear us, but we can't hear you, excuse me. So if you want to give us a question, we definitely want to see that. Use the console on the right hand of your screen, or it's usually over on the right side, to send us questions throughout the presentation. And we'll save time at the end to get to as many as we can. We may wrap up a little early, but that's okay. To answer everyone's favorite question off the top, though, anybody on the line with us will get that deck and the link to view this after the show, so you can share with your teammates and others as you see fit. So. All right, so with that, let's get into it. Want to introduce a couple of speakers today, both of which are thought leaders and subject matter experts on our own team. First, Brandon Wright is a certified practitioner in the theory of constraints, and he spent the majority of his career in various manufacturing roles, right? So food manufacturing, biotech, textiles. He's even worked and owned and operated a flour mill. And he's been in management at Pepperidge Farms, Chobani, Dan, and Kellogg's. So he's definitely been there, done that. And then finally, we have Eric Hansen, VP of Customer Solutions. Eric's actually probably been in some of the folks' plants that are on the webinar with us. He's been in the business for that long, and he's at some point probably been under there tinkering, trying to solve some capacity issues or solving for optimizing operations or processes. And he's been designing, developing, and delivering business optimization solutions for a host of industries: healthcare, supply chain execution, most notably for the past 20 years, process manufacturing and distribution markets. So that is it. Welcome, Brandon. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah,
Glad to be here. Yeah. And thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, definitely. We got a ton of people too, so this is great. Gentlemen, we've seen a lot of sort of different kinds of practices that are intended to help support CI, right? But we often sort of end up scratching our heads about the continuous part, right? So sometimes we end up with these one-time events that improve productivity for a little bit. It seems like it can wear off. So Eric, why don't you, if we will, start out by kind of taking us through what we're going to go through today and how we're going to approach this.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, we want to talk today about some strategies for approaching continuous improvement in your organizations. We're going to go into detail of 3 continuous improvement techniques. I want to emphasize, these are not really, we're not saying these are the 3 techniques, but I think this is a very nice representative samples of some different but very important approaches. You've got constraint analysis from the theories of constraints. Brandon's actually quite expert in this. In that, you've got the Genchi Genbutsu, the go and see, which is really critical. And actually, just to kind of characterize who we are here on the call. I'm really sort of the software guy on the call, where Brandon is the manufacturing guy. So I'm all about data, right? But I will acknowledge, and we'll discuss this as we go through, that while data can be incredibly valuable, elucidating what's going on in your organization, there is a risk that you will look only into those things on which you have data, right? Because that's easy. But there's a whole world of stuff going on in your plant, and you really need to go and see what's going on out there. Brandon will get into that Genchi Genbutsu, because that's his expertise much more than mine. Then I will talk to statistical process control. This is, again, really dealing with, in this case, a wealth of data, and talking about those places where we have data. How can we best leverage that to improve our operations? So we'll get into those three techniques, and then we'll talk about some examples of those from the real world that we've experienced. So there is a lot in the continuous improvement toolbox, and in fact, it can be overwhelming or intimidating. You know, which methodology do we follow? How do we approach this? What's our schedule? And my take on it, and I'm interested in what Brandon would say, is it doesn't matter that much. The idea is, let's start somewhere. Let's pick a program, and very importantly, let's put some controls around that program. So that's what we'll get into on the next slide. So 3 key questions you want to kind of address as you approach evaluating your continuous improvement process or implementing a continuous improvement process. First of all, what is the process? Are we following, and this is process methodology, I might be blending those words here, but some formulation of DMAIC, which is your define, measure, analyze, improve, control, or your PDCA, plan, do, check, act. Some formulation of those are very common, very effective, because they outline a series of steps that you should take just to make sure you're doing your diligence on those things that you're doing. So that's step 1. Let's settle on a standard process or a standard toolkit, so that we can do it repeatedly, become expert in it, but let's not stop there. The next question is to get into how your process is initiated, right? And so it's kind of the most basic regulatory requirement for continuous improvement manifests in that I've got an incident, and now I've got a corrective action I need to follow up. That's a legitimate continuous improvement process, but I would argue that it is the least mature, if we're thinking of a maturity model here, and we've got a slide on the next page that'll talk about that, because it's reactive, right? I had a problem, I took steps to address the problem, make sure it doesn't happen again. That's great. But what if we take a more proactive approach and we say, what do we know about our operation? You know, how can we head things off before they become issues, before they become corrective actions? There's a number of ways of doing this. We can have suggestion boxes is another one. Data analysis is another one. This typically involves a little bit more maturity, a little heavier weight resource, maybe a continuous improvement team helping to drive this type of activity. The third model is to schedule, another form of proactive, but I've got quarterly exercises I'm doing. And you know, what are those exercises going to be? That's the how is it focused element. Again, that can come out of data analysis, that can come from suggestion boxes on the floor, which is a super valuable actually approach, because your people on the floor know a lot about what's going on, and it behooves everybody to have them feeling more ownership in the process and improving things going on the floor. Then the final point here is actually really critical to driving successful continuous improvement programs, and that is, how is your process reviewed? So the first step is to make sure we're validating our outcomes. We don't want to be doing continuous improvement exercises for their own sake. Great, we defined, we measured, we analyzed, we improved, we controlled. We want to go back and make sure, did we actually execute according to discoveries? And did that execution actually delivered the intended benefits? So that's what I mean by validation of outcomes. The trick there, and why that will often get lost, is it takes time and it takes data, frankly, some measurables to get there. So it involves another level of commitment. The next thing is to really think deeply about blind spots. And this relates to that risk, the data risk I was mentioning earlier. Oftentimes we'll call that the street light problem, right? If you're walking down the street and you lose your car keys, people will tend to want to look for their car keys under the street light, but they might not be there, right? That would be the easiest place to find them if they were there, but they might not be there. So we can't just look where we have data. This is where your go and see becomes so effective. This is where your suggestions from the floor become so effective. Maybe where do we need to shine that light? Where do we need to look deeper? And then finally, periodic review is really important. This helps us make sure that we're executing our process in a productive way. So if validation of outcomes, the first element here, applies really to atomic projects, every iteration of a DMAIC exercise, a continuous improvement exercise. The periodic review is taking it annually, quarterly, and saying of all the projects we did, where were we successful? Why were we successful? What did that success look like? And using that to tweak your processes to make sure you're ever better. So basically it's continuous improvement on your continuous improvement. And we've got a quote here from, actually it comes from our very own Brandon Wright, who's going to take over here in just a moment. But that in his experience, and this is true in my experience too, but I didn't come up with the quote, the best indicator of success in any venture is to have a process and to manage that process. That is the takeaway from the slide. It's not enough to just say, this is the continuous improvement methodology we exercise. We want to make sure we've got the framework in place to review that. How's it initiative? Are we operating effectively, et cetera?
So yeah, that's right, and that's kind of from the book of Brandon, right, Brandon?
Yeah, book of Brandon.
Yeah, that'd be nice if there was, right? I think if there was just one way, it'd probably be just standard practice, right? This is how you run your business, but there are so many ways. Going back just a minute to what Eric talked about with having a process and having a like a systematic approach in your facility to handling and managing continuous improvement. There's so many times where I've either been asked to go and slay a dragon, or I've asked folks that report to me, hey, we got to go fix this thing, or we got to go do this. And there are many times where we run off and we go and we fight our battle and we come back with the dragon's head, and the boss is like, that's great, I'm very proud of you, but that's the wrong dragon, right? And we feel like we've done so well, and we've done, we've conquered the beast. I think that's why it's so important to have a really clearly defined continuous improvement process, because then as we have those debriefs or we're giving instruction, it's so much more fruitful in that conversation to say, let's talk about what you did, right? Did you follow the steps? Did you do these things? Where did it go right and where did it go wrong? How can we improve? Rather than, them coming back and saying, here's the dragon, and you say, that was the wrong one. We still have this problem. We need to go fight. So so important to be conscious about that process. For me, this chart is one of the ways that I tend to fall back to, right? Like I have a pretty straightforward mode that I operate on when I'm trying to fix things. And as the chart shows, right, step one, we need to document the current state. Where are we at? If you plop somebody down on a map and you say, hey, we need to go take that hill, if they don't know where they are, it's kind of hard to plot a course. So important to document current state and to define the ideal future state. What are we doing now? What does it look like? And what is it we want it to do? Sometimes we just know that we need to improve, right? We're not profitable, or we're missing orders, or not shipping, right? Which is big problems. But then really understanding, well, what does ideal look like? Well, we want to have every order shipped on time. Okay, what does that really mean? That means we probably have inventory, or we have exceptional execution, right? And all those things of planning. Step two would be to start digging into root cause analysis. Why are we not able to meet that ideal future state? Or what things are limiting us? What's holding us back? What things could work to get us there? What would be better? Then we're going to start to propose solutions, right? We're going to do some solution testing, and we're going to select what things we think will be the best to improve our process. On to step 3, we're going to go out and do that, right? We've talked about it, we've thought about it, we've done our assessments. We need to go and engage and start making improvements. As that process evolves, right, step 4, we're going to monitor what we've done and see if what we thought in the lab is really happening out on the floor. We're going to iterate, we're going to make minor changes. Things are going to be, right, we're going to miss things, but that's okay. We're still, it's a process of improvement. Eventually we'll finalize what this project is, and then we're going to formalize it, right? We're going to document our procedures. We're going to make sure that folks are trained. We're going to make sure that it's really clear on what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it's to be done. And then transitioning into step 5, we want to update our metrics. We want to monitor performance and report on the results of this project, right? Somebody has tasked us to go and make something better, to go and do something. We should be able to really clearly state how it started, what we did, and what the results were. And it's important to have that continuous feedback loop and to broadcast that out up and down in the organization to demonstrate that we're making progress, right? Or that, hey, we made a mistake. We thought this would work. This is what we thought and why, and this is why it fell down. But we're still on the path, right? And we're going to continue to get better. Okay, so for me, right, talking about those 3 methods we want to talk about, applying the theory constraints. Now that's it's not a giant ball of wax, but there's specific things to be done in that. And one of the ones that I want to focus on is actually identifying the constraint. So it's so easy to say, let's go make an improvement, let's go do things, but what should we do, right? Where should our focus be, especially in these times with limited resources? For me, when I think of the theory of constraints, that means focus. Where do we focus our efforts? And in this specific scenario that I'm talking to is, the objective is to increase our throughput. How do we get more product out the back end? How do we get more out at the end of the day with what we've got? Or what changes can we make to get more out? The first big step of this process for me is to map your process flow and the distinct steps that your realization process goes through, right? Beginning to end, we start here and it goes to here, to here, to here, to here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then as part of that process, we want to define the maximum output for each step. At the beginning of the process, I can make 100 widgets. The next step, that thing can do 250. It's way more capacity. The third step is 90, right? And we're going to go through our process and define what the theoretical max is for that step or that stage. And if you were to do that in a bar chart, it becomes really visibly apparent what the constraint of your process is, at least in terms of output, right? If the widget packaging machine, whatever that may be, can only run 80 units a minute, you will not produce more than 80 units. It doesn't matter how fast the beginning of the lines are, right? And if we've read the goal, which I highly recommend that you do, it's a pretty straightforward concept, but it's so easy to not do this, right? We sometimes, we assume that other people have done these assessments. We assume that due diligence has occurred, and it may not have. If we have that as a clear, distinct step that we can look to the team and say, have we mapped our process? Do we know what our capacity is at each step in the process? And do we know who our Herbie is, right? To use the goal language. Do we know what that constraint really is? Once that's identified, we can start to characterize what it would look like if we made an improvement. If we did get that packaging machine to produce another 20 units a minute, what does that really mean? In essence, we're lowering the water to get more rocks to come up, right? We can see how to navigate. Once we get that constraint identified and we know what it would look like when we make an improvement and a change and what that ideal state would be, usually what happens is another constraint starts to pop up, right? If we fix the packaging machine, sure, we can raise it to 20, but what if another step in the process can only do, 85 or 90? Now we've got another constraint that we can go focus on. But until we fix that constraint or improve that point in the process, all those other efforts around that are just fun exercises for process improvement. Not saying they're not important, but you won't see that throughput gain. So now that you know what to improve because you've done this process, you've identified the constraint, and you know what the results should look like in terms of throughput in this scenario and what you should do, you've got a focus point. Now we know we can ask the team, somebody comes and says, hey, I want to do this improvement. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to focus on. Here's why we're focusing on this area. And here's what we expect to have when we're done at the end of the day with this project. That's fantastical, right? Like that's what we want our folks and our teams to go do is rather than just like, I'm going to go make this better. I'm going to go do good. Okay, go for it. Hope you're successful, right? So hopefully this can help, at least on the front end of a project, to say, where should we focus and what should we do? How do we do this? Where should we spend our time and our efforts? So to give you an example from my experiences, we actually had a customer with Safety Chain that a larger company, a lot of resources, corporate level continuous improvement positions and seats and focus. At the plant level, each plant has a CI manager where they're focused on continuous improvement. They've got teams and culture, they've got boards, they've got charts, they've got all this information about how they're performing and productivity and performance. And they wanted to take their performance to the next level. So they implemented our OEE module because they wanted to digitize this effort, right? And all the tracking and all the data. They wanted to digitize that and get it out of pencil and paper and manual entry. As part of that process, we have to define what the theoretical max is for these lines so that we can build our OEE models within the software. So we did that. Their team came back and said, here's the theoretical max for this line. This is how many units it can produce. And they counted, right, like per minute, because that was our timing sequence. So we can do this many units a minute, which would roll up at the end of the day to be, this is how many units per hour. And this is what our benchmark is. We want to be at 85%. So, and they had traditionally performed about that level, right? And they wanted to get higher. So they set their targets, they set their standards, and we turned on the system. And we started to see that the results were extremely high, which is crazy, right? Here we are expecting to see about an 85% OEE performance, and we're seeing well above 100%, which shouldn't be possible mathematically, right, with the model. And so everybody's scratching their head, looking around the room saying, hey, something's wrong with this software. It's really not working right. We're just not getting the right numbers. Well, it turns out when we went back out to the floor and we actually stood there with stopwatches and stood there watching the equipment and the lines, turns out that their theoretical max hadn't been properly characterized. Their equipment could run faster than what they had thought all these years. This company had been around for years and years and years. And it was because we assumed that we had properly mapped the process. So taking the time to really step back and say, I'm going to stand here with a stopwatch and verify, or I'm going to look at the specs of this equipment, right? And it says that I should be able to run X units per minute or per hour, whatever. But to really document that process and string it together in a cohesive thought, whether that be on a presentation, on a piece of paper, whiteboard, whatever, but to see the flow and the speeds. What was so crazy is this group that wanted to see 5 and 10% improvements on their lines over the next year for their OEE, just by realizing that they could run their equipment faster. They saw, without any effort of improvement, just by, I think a lot of it was the Hawthorne effect of people knowing they were being seen and watched.
Yeah.
With digital system, they saw 37% increase in their productivity, which is phenomenal, especially in today's manufacturing environment where you're struggling to get people, right? You're struggling to get ingredients. When you run, you really need to maximize every single moment of runtime for output. Mm-hmm. And to just have somebody go, oh, wow, this machine really can run faster. And to do it and to see that kind of, I mean, it's phenomenal. So I can't overemphasize the importance of taking the time to properly map your process and like identify what the theoretical max is of each of those points along with process.
There's a pet point I'd like to make there, Brandon, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
Just that I want to point out that theory of constraints approach, the method that Brandon outlines there, really is a great way to get beyond just what the data is showing you. The data can highlight things, it can point you towards things, but it can also mislead you. And there are classic examples in the goal, and we've all seen them in our own lives, where that can happen. So if you're looking at a throughput problem, and you don't break it down, break the flow down and understand what's the capacity of each piece, you might end up solving the wrong problem. If we're still looking at, wow, I've got too much downtime on this piece or whatever, you might end up focusing on the wrong spot because that is in fact not the constraint. But you have to do that next level of analysis to get there. That's not there in the first blush of the data.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A really good point. So moving on to the next tool or method, whatever we want to call that. For me, right, and the what I've chosen to talk about today are the things that I see the biggest return from my time or from my team's time. The second one is Genchi Genbutsu, to go and to see. The Japanese and the Toyota production, right, the Toyota way, their Toyota production system. I believe back in the day, they would actually paint a square in the production floor and have this person stand in this box just to watch, right? Go and see what's really happening. It's easy when we walk through and everybody sees the boss and they straighten up and they behave a little bit more professionally, right? And they follow the rules and they do what they're supposed to do. If you're there for 4 hours or 8 hours or however many hours, you're going to see what's really happening. You can really identify the mechanisms of all the interactions in the process. Now it's limited to what you can see, right? Line of sight, but you will be able to see what's really happening. How many times have we sat down with our kids and we're like, let's do your homework together today. Let's see what's really happening, especially if they're struggling. And then they start to go through their process and you're like, how come you did that? Or why did you do that right there? Help me understand what you're thinking. It's so much more powerful than saying, hey, did you get your homework done? Yep, all done, ready to go. And they're off to play right there out the door. So there's so much value in being present and seeing what's happening. So for me, when I think about the objective, right, it's really about proper problem characterization. Do we really understand what's limiting us? What's our problem? If we go back to that last step and we've gone through our process map and we know what the theoretical max is, we know that we're not meeting that theoretical max for output every day. What is it that's causing us to fall down there? Well, let's go find out. To Eric's point, we can look at data and we can understand, and it can paint a really pretty picture of what our results are and what our downtimes are and all these things. But the reality behind those numbers, the value is in seeing what that really is, to talking with the folks that are really engaging with that process and really experiencing the day-to-day challenges. For me, that boils down to the Genchi Genbutsu. Go see. It's one thing to interrogate and study the data, but then to compare that to what you've witnessed. Standing there, even if you don't say a word, you just sit there and watch and see what happens and make your notes about when they have downtime, what happened, what was the operator doing, what was the process, what was exactly occurring, how long did it take, how long did it take for maintenance to show up after they were called. All of those little things. On the data side, it's going to say we were down for 35 minutes today on line 5. In reality, the equipment broke, the operator fought it, had fought it all day with micro stops that never showed up, and then finally had a big failure, hit that 35 minutes. They spent 10 minutes waiting for maintenance. Then maintenance had to go get the part. That was another 7 minutes. Then they got it installed, right? There's a whole bunch of details there that if we were to just say, we need to spend time improving this product, there are so many little tiny steps that need to be fixed on that improvement. We need to know which ones matter the most. By being present and being there, we can start to point to what needs to be done. So in my mind, evaluating improvements against the goal and the expected outcomes. We know we want to improve this line. We know what the data is telling us of where we're falling down. We know where we need to focus to have the biggest return on our investment for this improvement process. I've seen what's happening. I've seen what's causing them to have these stoppages or these slowdowns. Now I have an idea of what to do to fix it, because I've seen what's slowing them down. They got to walk 500 feet to the parts cage. Well, what if we had a person sitting in the parts cage when a maintenance call went down that was ready to grab the part and bring it to them as soon as they radioed it in? Maybe we could save 7 minutes or 3.5 minutes. I don't know. But now we can speak to the specific improvements. And when we're talking about making those improvements, they make sense to the folks on the floor. The people that are actually fighting the fight feel heard and feel seen and feel understood. And we're not pushing improvements onto them. We're working with them to define it. And they should be part of the team, right? If we're doing that Kaizen and they're involved, they're with us in that battle. So being out there is so important for me, right? Being present, being involved is a big deal. The last point there is to watch for those unintended consequences. So many times we think we know what the problem is, we think we know what the solution is, and we go and implement, and we just take off running. Sometimes we may create negative incentives that we weren't planning, right? So it's important to watch for those, and they may be outside of our typical metric structure, but maybe it hammers morale, or maybe it makes it so that we have higher turnover in a specific position because the job is just not a lot of fun. we might be getting better output, but it's a short-term win, and we're going to have long-term gain or pain. So I've got a story that I like to talk about with this. I was working at a company that we were just outside of startup. We were 3 or 4 years old. We had a process locked down. We were making products for architects and design firms. So it was a lot of physical labor on the front end of the process. And then we would put them into these big mechanical presses to turn them into a product. And then, in the process they went. And I was working nights at the time, and we had these pretty specific metrics. Our goals were to produce $400 worth of product for every labor hour we put in. And that was our goal. If we were above $400 per labor hour, we met our target. And if we hit 500, it was a big night and everybody was happy, and we were having the cheerleader effect, right? And I went home one day and went to bed, and I had this idea pop in my head in this lucid state of how we should be measuring our performance. I rolled over, wrote it on the back of a notepad, and went back to sleep. Got up early and went into work early that day. And I messaged my supervisor and I said, hey, I'm going to be in a little bit late. I got some stuff going on. Please get the shift started, and I'll see you as soon as I get there. I went in early, grabbed a stopwatch. I grabbed our schedule for that day and some paper. Climbed up in to the rafters. I was on top of a pallet rack, which OSHA would probably not want to hear, but climbed up on this pallet rack and I just watched the team start. And I started timing everybody, right? That Genchi Genbutsu, I was out there, I was hidden, but I was wanting to see what was really happening on the floor. What are we really doing? And to try to make a longer story a little bit shorter, what I found was that we were incentivizing our people to meet that metric, but we were basically getting activity and not achievement. Our folks were smart enough to know that they knew how much their product was worth that they were making. They knew how much time that would allow them for throughout the night, and they make sure they hit their metric. What we didn't do is ask how quickly product could be made. We didn't say this product should take 10 minutes to make. What we said was this product's worth $500. It's therefore worth one person's hour of labor, and that should be fine. Well, in all reality, if it only took 10 minutes to make that product, I should have got 6 out every hour. So what I did, I climbed down out of the rafters, and everybody's like, man, did you fall asleep? Everybody was razzing me. And I pulled my supervisors in. I said, I can't believe this isn't a bad thing. We've just had the wrong metrics. We've been asking the wrong questions. What I want to do is tomorrow when we start the shift, I'm going to come in early, and you guys are going to come with me, and we're going to lay out every product that we're supposed to produce. And instead of the value of the sheet, we're going to look at how long it should take a person to do that. Standard work, right? So we came in early, we said, all right, and we were just guessing at the time based on our experience. Well, this one should take 10 minutes. This one will take an hour. This one would, and we did that. And then we lined out the schedule based on the capacity of the people that were going to do the work, right? A schedule is nothing more than an allocation of capacity. So I know I have 8 hours minus breaks, and I know they can't work 100% all the time. So I'm going to schedule them at 85% capacity. So I had about 6 hours worth of labor from each person that was in this area. We scheduled 6 hours worth of product to be produced. No dollars, just the time. Scheduled the work, teams came in, explained what we were doing, and that we would be not timing them, but we wanted them to write what time they finished every single sheet on their schedule. Just note the time so that we could see. So there was a little bit of the Hawthorne effect again. People knew they were being observed and watched, and they stepped up and delivered. What was so crazy is with that change in the way we were measuring our teams, we went from producing about an average of $400 per labor hour, like I said earlier. Overnight, we jumped to $1,200 per labor hour. It was insane. Everybody, and we were on night, so everybody thought we were just, faking it. The next day, the CEO came in and he pulled me aside. He said, hey, I saw your numbers yesterday. That was pretty crazy. You guys just lucky or what happened? You have a really good schedule? I said, no, we kind of made some changes and we implemented them last night. You should come and watch. So out we walked to the floor, and my 2 supervisors are explaining everything for the day, right? They came in, they had done all their prep work, and the CEO's watching with me, and he pats me on the back and he says, have a great night, and walks out, right? He knew that we weren't just faking it. But that change, what was so crazy was it it allowed us as a startup with, we had tight margins. Our cost of goods were expensive because it was pretty, what we thought, labor intensive, right? It changed our margins from about 33% on the gross margin side. We went above 50%, which was insane for a startup, right? Trying to grow and get business. And now we could change our pricing structure, be more competitive, win more jobs. But it also made us attractive to the folks that like to buy companies. So just being out there on the floor and watching and asking those questions. If I weren't present, I wouldn't have known to make that slight change or to ask those questions or to know that we could do more. So being out there, being present is such a big deal, right? Get out there and see it.
That's such a great story, Brandon. Can I ask, and maybe you covered it, I apologize, what prompted you to go up in the rafters? I mean, what led to your suspicion that something was amiss?
So I can't say it was just the dream, right? Like it wasn't divine intervention or anything, or a bad meal before bed. But in previous lives, especially in machine shops and places like that, you've got pretty defined work, right? We've got this hunk of metal. We know how long it should take and how long that spindle should be touching it and turning out this piece of whatever it is. And they're measured to that, right? Like we know that piece should take this long to do. And it was, I don't know if it was just, again, my brain finally figured out that we should have been asking that. But for me, like I'm always asking, it's easy to say, how can we get better? How can we get better? Somehow something clicked in my head to say, what's stopping us, rather than saying, what's wrong or what can we change or how can we get, like we had just bought brand new equipment for the next step in the process because we thought that was the constraint. Well, the press is only open this often, right? When I was watching, I could see that we would have empty press cycles. So we were missing opportunities in what we thought was the constraint. And it forced me to look back. Like all of our assumptions of what our constraint was were wrong. So I don't know if it was just pain, right, of living in that situation and saying something just doesn't smell right, it doesn't taste right, but it was being on the floor. It was not accepting, what's good, what's okay. I don't know, something happened.
Yeah, it was a proactive step, in other words, though, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
And what was really neat was after we had proven it out, like after 2 or 3 weeks of us just destroying metrics, and the other two shifts were freaking out, right? They're like, what are you guys doing? Are you guys cheating? It was wild. We were doing what the entire team had done in a day in just our shift. We blew through the backlog of orders that we had. We started, like, it was crazy. We were asking the schedulers, hey, do you have any more product we can run? We're going to be done halfway through the shift. And being the night shift, there wasn't the folks to support. It was crazy to see the improvements and then to see those rolled out to the other teams. Like, now my supervisors were going to the other shifts and teaching the managers how to restructure their teams. It was really cool to see the growth from the folks that were, like front lines. They all of a sudden they were the big deal in the facility. They were a big deal in the company because they had figured this problem out that nobody knew was a problem, but it was like finding the bucket of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Eric, this is near and dear to your heart, I would say, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Talking about statistical process control, and what we really want to do is improve to predictable performance. So statistical process control, if we go back to the streetlight analogy, is really all about shining a bright light on a critical area. So if we're going to approach using statistical process control in our operation, we're going to want to first figure out what are the critical areas. What are our critical costs? Do we have super expensive, input, or a super valuable product that's sold by weight, or whatever it happens to be, or maybe we have critical processes that support the safety and regulatory compliance of our product that we need to make sure are super well controlled. These are the places we want to look at applying statistical process control. And in that application, and I apologize, I'm going to go quickly here just because I know we're close to the time, but the key is we first want to validate our process using statistical process control so we understand the capability of that process. In that case, that is really what's the likelihood of our being able to produce to spec that spec would include, our upper and our lower target bounds. And based on that, we'll set our target setting. Based on a good understanding of our variability, we can optimally set the target of that particular process. Maybe if it's we've got a 12-ounce package weight or something like that, we know there's enough variability. We have to make sure we're just gonna pull a number out of the hat, or we're gonna target a 13-ounce package product, just to make sure we're never gonna violate that weight on that label. But if our process is very well controlled, maybe we can set that at 12.5. That's kind of the step one, right? But what statistical process control does is it gives us a tremendous amount of very valuable data that is very specifically focused, right? There is an exercise that goes into collecting that data, and we can support kind of the automation of that collection, or it can be manual collection, and statistical process control is at its best offers an automated analysis of this data. In other words, we can specify this is the way we want to look at this data set, and we'll always, there may be other ways we can look at it, but this is the analysis we're presenting. And then finally, we want to understand what causes the observed results. This is going beyond that data, basically, and we'll see a good example coming up of this on the next slide. If you want to jump it.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. So, now we got some stats. Let's go.
so this is a great story, I think, came from an engagement we have with Top 5 poultry processor. They had a process we were helping them capture data for, very rigorous manual high frequency data capture, different thing required by a customer around a regulatory required point, but a customer required some additional reporting on it. So they had people that were basically, standing there and temping product all day long, submitting at a very high frequency what these temperatures were. We did a lot of work with them to kind of optimize our interfaces to support this. And in the course of doing that work, we generated a nice pile of data. At the end of that project, we were presenting that we finally got to where, we're supporting the user need to submit this data this quickly, and we're presenting kind of the accumulated data, really thinking, okay, we achieved the objective here on this usability project. But we had some members of the engineering team in the conference room when we made that presentation, and one of them jumped out of his chair and said, I knew you were cooking out my yield, right? So what we have here is some competing objectives. We had a safety requirement. We have to be above a certain lower spec limit. In this case, it's a kill temperature for microbacteria. But we're also selling product by weight. And as we get hotter, of course, we're cooking out our weight, we're losing yield. So what we see here, and this is very, very close to the profile of data we saw there, a process that's so well controlled that it looks like a target can be lowered. Okay, now, there may be other process constraints, there may be other reasons we're high in this thing, but this is now a dialogue that needs to happen, an investigation that needs to be done between the operations and the quality teams to make sure we're all understanding what's going on here. So this was a great conversation starter in the organization. It kind of unlocked for us a lot of other SPC use in that organization, and they're saving a tremendous amount of money using the statistical process control, both for controlling portion sizes, for controlling kind of temperature attributes, and making sure that everything is optimally tuned. But this is a great example now of where I have a tremendous amount of data about a very specific process, and that enables me to make the best decisions that aids me in optimal decision making, but broader context is always required. This is a starting point, and we want to go from here into that further investigation. So that's my SPC story.
Yeah, and it's funny.
And it was a happily ever after story.
Yeah, happily ever after. Very good. The story ended happily ever after. It's interesting because the visual nature of charting like this does give you a quicker sense of, hey, can we lower that spec, right? Can we without risk to quality or customer satisfaction, can we move this lower? Have you seen something a little bit more broadly ranging, you may not want to do that. But this, like you said, Eric, this is pretty tight. So that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Very good. All right. Well, Brandon, back to you. There's actually, we want to kind of make sure that some of these things stick. So what do we do next? What do we do with this stuff?
Right. Yeah. Chewing gum's a good way, right? Especially if you got kids. At least that's what I found. For me, right, it's easy to change is relatively easy to throw out there, but if the noodles aren't cooked, they're just going to fall off the wall. So, for in right Book of Brandon again, educating and involving employees from the beginning. If you're out there fighting the fight with them, if they know that you are part of that group, right? There is no us and them. There is no we or they. If it's us, I think that gets a lot of, especially if they're their ideas, right? What would make this better? How would you help us have faster maintenance response times, right? And also looking like who's doing well, rather than just trying to find out what's going wrong. Where's it going right in the process, and what's happening there? Let's go tap that subject matter expert. Let's see, how come your film changes are so much faster than everybody else? How come your spindle time is so much higher than everybody else? What is it you do? They're going to shoot you pretty straight, right? Especially if it's over a cup of coffee. So get them involved, right? They're making it happen. Be present beyond the project, right? It's so cool when the bosses come out on the floor and they're excited and everybody's jazzed up, and then they go back to the office because they got stuff to do. They're like, yeah, I saw the boss once. It was really cool. He's a really good person. So being out there, being present, being involved, checking in, following up, right? 2 months later, if you're walking through, you're like, hey, how is it? Are things still sticking? Are we going? I see your numbers are looking great. Reinforcing their efforts and their wins just by saying, I'm seeing it. It's awesome. Thank you so much. What's new? What did we mess up on? Where did I go wrong? Owning that, right? That extreme ownership, to quote one of my heroes. So be out there, right? Be involved. And then for me, as the customer of those results, right? Whether you be the boss or the CI person or a stock owner, whatever, have those metrics to automate that accountability, to automate that result feedback loop, right? And then to inspect what you expect. Are we doing these things? Are they doing the new process? Are the results sticking, or did we see a dip back down after we walked away? Right? But by automating that, whether it be automating the data collection or automating the reporting or whatever those metrics may be, having that in front of you and saying, this is what I should be getting. I've got goals and we're hitting them. To me, those are the big.
I would add one, Brandon, to this, and not to to outshine or anything here, but I think there's another thing here, and you said it mostly educating on the first one about involving employees from the beginning, but celebrate the wins, make them visible, and make sure that the teams know that the work they're doing is important, right? Celebrating can just be some pizza or cake or whatever in the break room. There's some visible ways that you can engage everyone in this process, and in doing so, you're really going to start to build a culture around that continuous improvement. So these are. Yeah. All right. Well, look, we've got just a couple of minutes left. I'm going to jump into some questions that we've got. So first one, I appreciate Stephanie's, I'm sorry, not Stephanie, but Amanda's note. She said, not a question, but this first slide is excellent. It simply explains what I have struggled to do for my team. Thank you. So very, very good. Thank you, Amanda, for those words. Also with a question, have you ever applied SPC tools on qualitative type metrics, qualitative, not quantitative? If so, do you have an example of what that looks like? Quality doesn't always get to have a number to describe a specification, which is a really cool point that she's making.
Yeah, there are a couple of methods of doing that. Oftentimes we might be counting defects, we might be counting incidents, we might be charting the time between incidents. Those are the classic methods. In order to do statistical process control, you do need to convert that qualitative stuff to numeric stuff, because all the statistics is based on the numeric requirement, but there are classic methods to doing that. And I have seen that used very effectively, defect tracking and mean time between incident tracking to see, to try to get on top of processes. Where am I seeing significant failures? How can that affect my preventive maintenance planning? And and looking upstream, if I'm seeing too many of this kind of defect, using that as the basis for investigation. How do we prevent that?
Yeah, there's always going to be that translation to list. So let's say there's a check you're doing on the color or saturation of color or something like that. Like you're shining light through plastic or something like that. There's always going to be some way that you can say, how far out of spec or out of that conformance are you? Digitizing that to get it to capture is going to really help out that process and take that qualitative and really make it quantitative. So. Yeah. Another question here really quick, and we're going to wrap up just with this one. So Charles asked, we want to become, it's kind of a long one, so I'll just kind of synthesize it. We want to become more mature. So he's talking about the CMM, the model. They want to get to the quantitative pie, or not pie chart, but cake layer right there at the top. And his question is really boiled down to, what do you do first? Is it something that you can apply software for, or do you focus on CI type events? And I'm going to give that to Brandon to give a shot for us.
To try to be succinct, for me, if you have, it's usually not the tool, right? It's usually the culture and the way groups are right. We perform to where we're managed. So I think making an environment that's safe to have bad ideas and good ideas, right? There's a lot of ideas out on your floor, I would guarantee it. Lots of different ones. Some might be great, some might be not so great, but making it safe to share it, making it known that improvement is expected, right? Status quo is not what we're going for, right? If you're involved in that battle, making it apparent that you like, and then setting processes, right? Hey, we're going to do some Kaizens. We're going to schedule these things like we do with an audit, right? We know we got to do these things. We're going to do GMP audits. We're going to do 5S audits. We're going to do it's just how we're just going to do it. If there's some accountability and a culture around making those changes and making things better. And I think that starts with people just owning it and stepping in to do that. And it becomes contagious, especially if the company's willing to invest in that, right? They're willing to invest in people being away from their job for a few days to go do a Kaizen event. They're willing to spend money on making things better and making it known that they're really committed to it. So that it's not just, the book of the week or the word of the month. It's got to be real.
The soup du jour. Awesome. All right, Brandon, thank you so much for that. I would add only one thing, to that culture side is like, don't put software or apply fixes to a substandard process. Just review your processes first. Really make sure that those are documented. Make sure basically you have those underlying steps firmed up, that you are at that managed layer, that you can go and actually stand there and say, hey, show me the process document for this step in our process right here. Look at the process as it's being done. Check to verify and validate that the process document is accurate. And that's the foundation for doing anything else, because until you have that standardized process, until you're at that managed layer, any of those tools, you're not going to get anywhere with software, because you're just going to be starting to poke around in the wrong places. And then the CI things are going to quickly point to that, what I just said, which is, oh, you don't have a standard process. So, all right, if you want to come visit us, definitely go to our website, webinars and events, and you'll see where we're at. So I appreciate your time, Brandon and Eric. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond Compliance.
Thank you, everybody.
It was great.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
All right, and that'll end it for today, but we appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Bye.